Kia ora and welcome to the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. One of my favourite things about this job is you never really know what we're going to be talking about next week. And one thing I didn't think we'd be talking about was a 35-7 hammering of the All Blacks by the Boks. But we did kind of think that maybe Fiji was a chance against England. So it'd be great to talk about that during the show. Plenty to get through on a weekend where the Rugby World Cup and who could win and who couldn't win was all thrown out the window. And now we've got a tournament coming up in a couple of weeks where we just don't really know what's going to happen outside of the fact that France are going to be pretty bloody good. So let's bring the guys in. James Parsons, did you have a good weekend?
Yeah, I mean, it was good. There's a lot of footy. NPC went well. But I suppose my two teams, the All Blacks obviously struggled and Harbour lost last minute. So outside of that, there was some good rugby played. I think it's great for Fiji.
Yeah.
I thought that was a great result, and I thought Samoa fronted up as well, which was good to see.
Superb. And if that form continues, who knows what the quarterfinals might look like?
Just leaves everything in the air. I do agree with you. I think France are well placed. Like, they seem to be peaking at the right time.
Speaking of peaking, bringing in Bryn Hall all the way from Japan. He's had a couple of rests, and now he's going to be ready to bring his absolute A game into this World Cup preview show. We've got a couple of World Cup preview shows, but Bryn Hall, how's it over there, mate? You good?
Not too bad. Probably actually had a bit of a stop, actually. Got COVID on the Sunday test before the old yo-yo, so...
You got COVID just before fitness testing?
Yeah, got away with the yo-yo, so got a bit of stick from the lads, but no doubt I'll be picking that up pretty shortly.
He was walking down the aisles of the plane, breathing in everyone's air.
To be fair, this man does not struggle with any fitness tests. So, I think if it was a lower number in the team, you'd say it's well timed. But for him, he probably would have beaten most crook.
Okay, well, what we'll do is we'll get into this big time today, into what happened on the weekend. But we've also got to acknowledge we're going to have Rieko Ioane later on the show in a series of the interviews we did with the All Blacks leading into this particular program. So let's go. This is the Aotearoa Rugby Pod, so we'll start with the All Blacks. Jipper, I know you didn't see that coming. To what degree were you surprised by the result, and which parts of the game were you most surprised by?
Probably just the way the ref interpreted it, to be honest, first and foremost, and that's what sort of started the flow. We said a few weeks ago that sort of set piece, maul D, and discipline's probably going to decide this World Cup, and a big part of adjusting, I suppose, to a ref is about that. And there's a certain way that he interpreted that you couldn't touch the jumper, but from a defensive maul point of view, it's just used as a guide to get your timing right to hit in. But because he saw that as, sort of interfering with the opposition before, those are where those advantages. And then because that's the system you trained, it's quite hard to sort of adjust that and get the timing right. And they didn't get the timing right, which led to the cards. And I think from there, there's some pretty solid D in that first part, but I think that sucked a lot out of the tank as well, because they were covering cards, and then, and if you look at it statistically, the All Blacks, they were pretty even, if not better statistically, but because of the inability to have 15 on the field for long periods and to stop that maul, that's where the problem. And I think if we can rectify that, Jace Ryan's the best in the business, in terms of that, then I don't think we'll see that. If we use the Marks try as an example, because they're short of man, Artie has to have his head in that more. Normally you want to be on the outside so that you can help Aaron out. But, they had such dominance. It was a great decision to go to that front play. But do you just see how it affects the whole defensive system, and you can't sort of be half committed to a maul. So, Artie had to go in, and then, Aaron did well to try and get to Marks, but he was never going to stop him. So I don't think it's as drastic as that scoreline says.
Just before we go to Bryn, I just want to, because some people I think are going to raise their eyebrows going, the All Blacks dominated.
I don't think it's dominate, but if you look at the statistics, in terms of gain line percentage, I was surprised that they were at 49% gain line percentage, more clean breaks, I suppose less errors, similar amount of penalties, believe it or not. But the cards really, really drove it home. Less
error is an interesting one, Bryn, because my memory of it is that they dropped the ball, struggled to hold it in the tackle. There were all those things going on constantly that the All Blacks, in some ways, while the Springboks were very dominant and very good, were their own worst nightmare with just basic stuff.
Yeah, and I guess that comes back to pressure. you talk around the first half. Look, the first 20 minutes, man, I think we had 8 or 9 penalties against us, and that came through obviously the ill discipline at the line-out time and not getting that right and not being able to interpret the refs' way of how they ref the game. I think first and foremost, that's probably a great learning that we're able to get it before going into the World Cup, that the Southern Hemisphere, Northern Hemisphere refs, they just ref it differently. And so it's a great learning for that group, I think, that to be able to adapt on the run with solutions. And look, they probably tried to on the field. No doubt they would have talked around, what the solution is of how we can rectify the line out, which they actually did, in that first half. I think within the first 10 minutes, they didn't actually score from it and they were able to find solutions. But, then the back of that, 2 different ways of scoring tries, one around the front with Marks and then obviously Kwaha Smith in the second half going through that transition area. So the variety that the South Africans used was great in terms of being able to get the All Blacks thinking in and around not just the maul, but in and around their attack structures. But just the discipline areas, it's a massive improvement that they're going to have. And then I think also the handling areas in the second half, I think was just built to scoreboard pressure. I think with the tries that were being scored, not being in that kind of mindset, I think, in that situation this year, especially not being put under pressure, it all kind of came in one big heap in that second half, and we were able to try and chase the game, which we haven't done this year. So if you do look at it is dominating in terms of the score. You do look at the scoreline, you think the All Blacks were dominated, but I agree with Jip. The interpretation of what we're going to have to look at with these Northern Hemisphere refs, trying to get their right solution focused, and then being able to not give away yellow cards and red cards, which in Tau really lost us the test match, I believe.
The worst thing to do against a Springbok side, or even when we played Super Rugby against South African sides, is to piggyback them into the 22. So out of the 12 times South Africa entered our 22, 9 of them were mauls. Yeah, obviously 2 trick plays, but that's a lot. There's a lot more than you desire when, the biggest weapon to stop a maul is not give away a penalty.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because that's the first step. If your discipline's really, strong, you're not going to give them that access to the 22, which they did really well in Mount Smart. But 9 out of 12, they're going to the corner, and they've got variation now, interpretation of the ref. And another thing is, when you get offside with a ref, that naturally, I think they look at the team that's given all the penalties a little bit more, and you get away with a little bit more if you're the other opposition. And that's why I always say, teams that can adjust to refs relatively fast, like test the boundaries early, but then adjust, are normally the ones that will come out the better. And that's, the Springboks just put the acid on.
There are over 1,000 test caps in that 23. You would think that the ability to compose yourself and have the experience to adapt to the ref on the go should have been something that All Blacks team had in spades. Yeah,
there was a sense of frustration. Like, you could even see, I think it was, I don't know if you remember at Bryn, when Aaron passed, Ethan de Groot was the pointy end of the triangle in the goal line, and it went past and Sam Cane had to force it, and then they got that scrum from there. You could see sense of frustration because there was mounting of pressure. I mean, no one's superhuman. It doesn't matter how many test caps you have. When you make that many mistakes, yes, they'll have systems to go to, but the reality is they just didn't get the ability to execute them.
For that group for the next 2 weeks, the amount of things that they'll be able to learn, and knowing that they're going to be playing the French in the first round, the very first game with all the crowd, they might not get things that go their way. Let's just say hypothetically, we play that test match, we beat South Africa, and we don't get that opportunity that we had in France for the very first game, which was all these kind of things happen with the reffing, not being able to stunt that kind of snowball effect, which in turn kind of happened for that first game. So I know it's not an excuse, but I know the learnings that have been made within that group of when they get themselves in that situation, they'll be a lot better for it. But they tried. Look, man, I can imagine, Egypt, when you're in those kind of situations, you'd be thinking solution focused, but sometimes you can always do solutions, but at the same time, it comes back to an execution and then being able to get the momentum and confidence from there, which they didn't get on the weekend.
And they're going to have to, depending on where Scott Barrett, situation goes. If Brodie's injured, I don't know what that bench makeup, if they're going to stick with a 33 and not replace someone. You've got Sam Whitelock, Tupou Vaa'i, which will go into the locking positions. Then you've probably got Luke Jacobson, Sam and Artie. And then you've got Dalton on the bench, but there's no locking cover or another loose forward because Frizzell obviously They may need to push for either a Brody or a Frizzell to come back earlier than they desire in the French game. So it's straight into straight into it. It's not. They certainly haven't had it all their own way before they've even entered the World Cup in the situation they're in, and they don't have to confirm that 33 till they go in. So they may make an adjustment to cover this.
It was only a few weeks ago we were talking about the fact that this 18-15 split within the 33, 18 forwards, 15 backs, seemed a little risky. Here we are now, and it's borne its fruit. It's bared fruit? How does that English go?
Fruit.
There's fruit. There's fruit, Bryn.
Well, there is. And I think, look, you go in with plans and thinking that, if you're looking around more so the loose forward and locking trio, you're hoping to think that we were a little bit thin when the 18-15 split was named, not thinking that this kind of thing would happen right now, but you have to think there are contingency plans around what that's going to look like. And they do have 2 weeks before they do go in. It seems like Brody's recovering faster, so he's on the golf course with a knee brace. So he can't be too far away. So, but yeah, you just like to think, man, if we do get a couple more little injuries here and there might have to be an adjustment come in 2 weeks' time and bring in a Sapeni Finau, or someone else in that loose forward 6 cover, which we might have lost in that first game.
And then do you lose a winger?
Yeah, I suppose you have to.
Yeah.
And that would be pretty harsh, but they'll know the outcome of Scott's situation prior to entering the World Cup. So you'd have to think everything's on the table because the other option would be, you hope, maybe a back can cover loose forward. I'm not too sure. I know we don't even like fullbacks playing centre, so maybe we don't like backs going. So there might need to be a change. I don't know. Like, I'm just saying, there's a lot. If Frizzell or Brody are not tracking ahead of schedule, they were both not supposed to play that first round. So yeah, there's plenty of food for thought.
Less defying Nuku, I presume, is your loose forward cover if you are going to
I reckon
Geordie
Barrett, man. He's a big body. You can line-out option, mate. You get in the air. He just replaced his brother.
Oh, he can play everywhere, can't he? And he's got the height for it. So, yeah, your Geordie Barrett he was there on the weekend. And so you have to ask the props and seeing if he was pushing or not. But I can imagine he being a Barrett, he would have done pretty well in that space, I think. But even Leicester can cover at a pinch. Geez, if you got in there, what if. But you'd have to think they'd have to get rid of a winger if they're going to bring in another loose forward because, you can't be going the whole World Cup with a back being able to cover the loose forward like that.
This pre-World Cup series has been amazing, like the precursor to the Cup itself.
Full of drama.
It has been a wonderful setup to get a tournament going, Bryn. It hasn't happened like this before, and it should always happen like this, in my opinion, from here on in. What do you think?
Oh, I think so. I think first and foremost, the squads and the teams that can be able to win this World Cup, it's never been so open. So there's that obviously excitement that anybody could win the competition. It's not a foregone conclusion that it's two or three teams. Or
even Fiji, Bryn, Jipper, after that performance on the weekend. We've been talking, he's excited. We've been talking about the draw. You said a couple of weeks ago after the Japan game that this is a team to watch.
Yep.
And here they are doing what they did on the weekend against a very poor England team, and they really showed them what's up.
So I know I harped on about this with the Drua, but I was interested to see and I said this after the Japanese game, their game management is their biggest improvement. So we've got 2 rucks in their own 22, we've got 15 in their own half, 15 rucks total in their own half, and then 63 obviously in the opposition half. So just to give you a sense, they're just not playing rugby out of their half. They have got a good kick strategy, and Glenn Jackson seems to be taking on the same sort of methods he had with the Drua. And then when it's almost like when they get permission is light it up. Once you're in their half, you light it up, go for it. But outside of that, we're either going to go to contestables or we'll find a way to sort of get to an edge and then kick. And their discipline around that is outstanding. They probably didn't quite have that right against France, and that cost you. But when they get it right, and similar to the Drua, they win test matches. And not only that, is their option taking. So at the end, it was 3 tries apiece, but Muntz was pinpoint with his kicking, and I don't want to say it was choose him or Benny Volleyball. I don't know. I still think you could fit them both in the squad, but he made a big statement on the weekend. Like they're a genuine force with him at 10, and I don't know, just that forward pack's humming. Their set piece is strong. Their ability to keep the ball alive when they win collision. It's not reckless offloading. And on the flip side, England are just probably over trying. Like if I use the Kura volley try, like there's 3 guys rushing to the player with the ball, and he just goes like that and he runs through. Like if it's like they were so desperate to solve the situation on their own, rather than sort of staying connected and staying in that defensive system. Those opportunities don't present itself. But look, I've said it last week. Like when you're in these teams that are struggling, like you do sometimes try too hard as individuals, and it breaks the system, and in the end that's what breaks them down.
I think a real important guy that I think is going to be massive for them is Frank Lamani. I've been so impressed with his game management and his execution of his kicking and understanding of when to kick when they don't have momentum. And along with Caleb Muntz, I think with Muntz as well, we talked about Ben Volleyball and the experience of having him there, but obviously I think with the way he played on the weekend, especially his goal kicking, which I think is massive in World Cups, to be able to, I think it's pretty perfect from the tee and being able to accumulate those scoreboard points. And I think all the Fijian boys need, especially their outside backs, they don't even need an overlap. They just need a one-on-one opportunity to be able to get past people. You talk around test matches and, the ability to be able there aren't going to be massive gaps. You're not going to have those overlaps where you're going to have a lot of space. And all they need, their outside backs, and Levu and, their outside backs, just on the outside, back and the inside to Levu, and they score a try. And sometimes in test matches, that's all you're going to have. And they have the ability to be able to do that. And I think, their discipline as well was a lot better on the weekend, and their set piece, like Jip said, has been a lot better. So I think playing the French, they got a really good acid test in the sense of what it's going to look like with a really top tier team. And then I think was great for them to be able to take the learnings and then being able to implement that against, an English team that's really struggling for confidence. So really good. And, that draw, I think they've got a really good opportunity to get into that quarterfinal stage, and even, more than that, moving forward on that side of the draw.
Topping the pool even, Bryn.
100%. With the way that they're playing and the things that we've talked about, absolutely, that should be their goal. I know the quarterfinal is, but man, that draw, definitely, they're definitely in a chance of going top of that pool.
If they can give away 7 penalties every game, they probably will top that pool. Like 7 penalties, great game management, putting themselves in the right part of the field. Those 7 penalties, where were they given away? They definitely have positions where they'll chance their arm, and then they're really strict within their D structure and systems when it gets closer to the post and obviously to the in goal. And probably they haven't been too tested at maul time, so that maul D will be interesting against like a South Africa or potentially the French. But it's definitely looking up.
Let's go to the Rieko Ioane interview. Now, we did mention last week that this interview was coming up, and we had a few questions come in for Rieko. Sorry, we couldn't ask them because the interview was recorded a few weeks back when we did all of these All Blacks interviews in one day. But we started off by asking a little bit about the gameplay, about his change from the midfield or to the midfield, and also what it looked like as far as who was the fastest player within this All Blacks squad. Rieko, thanks very much for coming on, mate.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Apologies for not having Jipper here, your number one fan.
Yeah, my guy.
He would have exploded on set if he had actually been here, but,
all good. Definitely looking forward to it. I'm glad Jip's not here. Sabbatical, is he?
Yeah, mate, you could arguably, if you had your career, one of the best wingers in the world. But obviously you played centre at Auckland Grammar, you came through the age grade playing that position. How have you found the last 24 months? Because you've obviously played there a lot now. That's kind of you're seen as the centre. What's been happening around the last 24 months? So we're getting the best version of Rieko now?
Yeah, I think probably sort of when I first started playing centre, I guess, there was still a bit of chop and change around that wing role, and even having to cover it late in games. And now obviously still having the ability to do that, but I've been able to focus, and coaches now aren't sort of seeing me as that wing centre. It's centre first, and So I think that's probably helped. I've got time in the saddle in the teams that I've played for, and more so just the belief and sort of trust in them, and sort of because I've always believed in myself and my game at 13, and it's just a matter of sort of other people, the coaches seeing that. So that's probably the big part, and then I've had the sort of the goats of the midfield to work with throughout my time. I've had Tana, Sonny, Scucks for a bit at the Blues. So, those three in particular for a 13 and a sort of 13 that's trying to establish himself. Those three, you can't look past them. They've helped me each in their own special way.
You've got your speed. I think your distribution has come a long way. Like you're right now, I think you're one of the best distributors in the world. Is there anything in particular that you're trying to hone your craft in to be the best in the world at?
I need to get you on the coaching. Stuff.
That's what I mean. That's what we talk about, mate. That's what we talk about.
Yeah, look, obviously there's always areas that you can get better at, and you sort of, defensive tendencies are a big one, and they're sort of when you get into big moments or fatigue moments, that's where sort of your habits need to come into. So it's more that stuff. It's not too many big things, although there is big parts of my game that I probably could work on. For me, it's about fine-tuning those, instinctive moments. So it's not to tuck and carry. It's now to draw and pass, or it is to, it's to slide and push in defense rather than just, rush up and jam. And it's getting more of those moments correct than not. So that's the way I see it. It's those little moments now becoming free-flowing because, the centres that have gone before me, they've helped the game flow, and, the impacts, although it might not be runaway tries or whatever, they've helped linking, they've made all their tackles, they've done their core roles really well. And I want to be able to do sort of that with what the flavour I bring to.
I look at the try against Argentina, the line that you ran for Damien McKenna, not Damien's try. Who ended up scoring that?
Bowden.
Bowden scored that. And I mean, those are your lines with obviously Geordie and doing the selfless acts that you're talking about. Do you find that, working with Geordie now and getting that combination, you've gone through with David Havili a little bit, but you feel like you're getting the momentum and the mojo with working with Geordie? Yeah,
I think it is. And it's, I felt that similar. Davey and I were gelling quite well before he got injured, and it's a matter of I've had a couple games now on the trot with Geordie, and seeing what he brings and sort of him bringing his best game to our back line, and me also bringing mine is what we've probably struggled with. We both want the ball, and but now it's about how we can control, both of our, like I talked about, our natural instincts are to carry, and now it's how we complement the back line, which is, I think, in a really nice spot. And like you said, those selfless acts pay huge.
So there's just a lot of conversations between you and him, just figuring it out.
Yeah, it is. It is definitely. I mean, he's a big body. He's him and I similar weight. Around that 104, 102 mark. So he's always going to attract defenders, and he's like a bull at the gate. Even off the training pitch. He's bloody intense. But his ability to offload and attract defenders. As a 12. That's that becomes your main role, and that's sort of becoming his role in our backline. He is that crash bash with the ability to kick and offload. So he's doing it all for us at the moment, and it's cool to see.
It's a crazy triple threat game you bring.
Yeah, 100%.
And just on that, because I think where you guys have got to at the moment, and you're forecasting obviously with the World Cup coming up shortly. You see the French and the Irish. Yeah. The Irish came here last year and did a job when you was in the series. But where do you think where they're at is really important for you guys to be able to get it right? I'm thinking breakdown and your attacking kicks, which you guys have done really well in the past 2 test matches. Are those the areas that you guys are concentrating on, knowing what's ahead?
When they did come last year, their breakdown was huge, and they were getting 2-second ball every ruck, if not quicker. ability for their bigger boys, their tight forwards to, ball play, flat at the line with the backs they have. They came really well prepared, and I think they sort of modelled how the game was evolving. And now you see, the likes of our big boys being able to do the same. We're fitter, faster, and as you said, we're I feel we're in a place where we're more physical, especially around that breakdown. You look at our forwards and the work they're doing. It's as a back, it's easy playing off, and as a line, I'm sure
100%.
You get to unleash the backs that you have with the forwards doing that.
Fitter and faster, Nick Gill in World Cup year, do you have to temper him?
Yeah, look, it's, if I'm having as little interaction with Gilly as possible, the year must be going pretty good. So, I think Gilly's been around a while, and he's a very knowledgeable man, and only recently he's found social media because he posts every week. But he's got a plan, and the boys every week we turn up, we're ready to play, and the body's hissing, ready to go.
You're one of the fastest guys out there. What do you do to maintain your speed, and how do you go about training to keep yourself at that level that you need to be, whether it's a standing 10 or a standing 40 or whatever it is?
I think it's definitely changed. When I was playing wing, I was sort of getting a lot of opportunity on field as well as at training. In actual games, I was getting chances to run, but at 13 now, the opportunities are, few and far between in a lot of games. But, as you said, working on that stuff during the week, and Gilly in particular, he's huge on speed, and, he's got all of our, if not all of our backs, even our nines going, 50 metres. We're trying to reach that top end because, the way the game's going, everyone sort of is expected to finish those 40-metre breaks, and not be like Brendan and I. And
mate. Oh, no, this guy I won't even remember. He was so young. I remember when I was at the Blues, and sometimes when you run the positive line, that's about you're just running in that sideline, and every single time it's quite easy to keep up with some players. But I remember Rieko a couple of times would go on the outside, and he'd just break through the line, and I'm trying to keep up with. This is when I was actually fast as well, and there's no way I was able to catch up with him. So when it comes to speed, there's not many faster. Maybe Will Jordan might be thinking a bit different, but you're pretty electric.
Will Jordan, is it?
I don't know, is he?
Is that the word going round?
I don't know. He does back himself as you know.
Yeah, like Jill's rapid. There's a few boys in the team that are flyers. I mean, basically all of our backs, bar probably our 10s onwards, and probably Chuck, Cam and Finn and the...
Oh, no, Nug.
Oh, Nug is... I think Finn's got him for speed, but so I chuck our 10s onwards. Everyone can move. So.
You're backing yourself, maybe Jordan second.
Oh, look, I don't know, and I'm happy there's no Olympics, so this is all just talks.
Now, mate, just wanted to, we've had a lot of code. This is obviously a code show. I'm going to take it a little bit lighter. You still into your shoes? Because if I remember correctly, when I was younger, you used to wait in line for the shoe label. Obviously, you're now a little bit more world known. You're getting this for free now, are you? Those shoes are not lining up at 12 o'clock at night?
Nah, honestly, I still enjoy the thrill of it, but definitely not lining up. But look, I was a big sneakerhead, and obviously now everything I wear is Adidas. So,
it comes to free now.
I'm just grateful, hand up, not out.
That's it. All right, what else keeps you going? Like, we've talked a lot of golf today. You're not into golf?
Oh, nah, not as much as the other boys, and I'm sure you've had a few that love it, but. Yeah, look, honestly, days off for me are very cruisy, and even if we get a week off or two, it's just myself at home. I've got my partner there. I've got my dog and my 2 cats, and it's enough for me. And so Yeah, I'm basically at home, out at the beach or whatnot.
He's 26 years old and you've done so much, Centurion, 60 test matches. You're probably going to be going close to be a Centurion as an All Black, obviously, with how long you've signed. What are your goals? What do you obviously want to win a World Cup, but you've got 4 years you've committed to New Zealand.
Yeah.
What do you want to do before you end your career here in New Zealand?
I guess everyone's goal is to bring home that trophy, but outside of the All Blacks environment, look, I just want to be the best player I sort of can be, and obviously I want to get that super title, that especially back home. So those are probably the two immediate goals. But then outside of that, there's going to be other things that pop up, and I'm sure in a couple of years' time or a year's time, that would have changed by then. But
so mature, man. Mature since when I was with him. Love it. Love it.
26. He's been in the game for like 7 or 8 years.
It seems like he's 30, but he's 26 still in his prime.
like I'm 30.
Awesome, mate. Well, thank you very much for joining us on the show.
Thank you.
Good luck for the upcoming games and the World Cup.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, brother.